So it's been a while since I did a video on the Super Libertarian. Recently I came across a bunch of comments on a video that was released by Njanovic1980, for which he released another video titled Super Libertarian, the subject of which is none other than Mr Killian, of whom I've had some dealings with in the past, as my regular subscribers will know. Curious about what Mr Killian would be doing now with his critics, I decided to take a look at some of his comments. Not surprisingly, he was up to his usual tricks. Now a note to everyone watching this video. I did not respond in what might be considered a rational fashion, nor will I ever again be responding in what may be considered a rational fashion to this self-proclaimed expert on the economy that is known as Shane DK. He long ago sacrificed any right to expect a reasonable, rational response when he did not do the courtesy of responding in kind on any of my videos in which he made a comment. There is only one exception, of course, to this, and that was on one part of my critical analysis video on What the Bleep. The only reason he responded rationally there, and the reason it didn't descend into a clusterfuck, was because I accepted his statement without question. 3 years ago, he came across a video I did, titled Responding to BreakTheMatrix, What Battlestar Galactica Taught Me About Healthcare, in which I pointed out the flaw in using a TV show to make your point when the opposite point can be made using the exact same TV show. Surprisingly at the time, but completely expected with what I know now, Mr Killian's opening salvo was a comment that was not a rational statement. Our back and forth demonstrated further examples of his irrational insistence that he is right and that I was wrong, and no amount of explanation or clarification would do anything to calm him down or stop his tirade. Needless to say, he described me in the same way he described every single person who doesn't follow libertarianism: a cultist, a dogmatist, and a statist. I'm none of these things. For one thing, I don't sit on the extremes of either the political or the religious spectrum, though I'm sure Mr Killian would dispute this statement and claim he has facts to back it up, which he doesn't. Mr Killian's ideas of facts are nothing more than quotations that he is prepared to use to his own ends. This is what he and his acolytes do. Now I went out of my way to warn him about continuing along this fashion, told him to knock off the insulting tone and behaviour, to which he responded that I was behaving like a creationist. I mean, where the hell did that come from? And I told him that if he could not summon up enough restraint to respond only to the arguments I presented, then he should either stop commenting or I would put him in timeout. He was unable to comment without resorting to such behaviour, which is probably why he didn't bother commenting at all. And just as well, because if he had been put into timeout at this point in history, he would most likely have done what Virgil0211 does on his channel, which is to set up a proudly blocked by the following morons list. I'm on that list, and I wouldn't want to hurt his ego by taking him off of my block list, so he will remain there. Now the problem, of course, would be that I was severely restrained, and I gave Mr Killian every single chance, which is why he remained unblocked for well over 2 years. Now of course we follow up with what happened 2 years later, which as many of my subscribers will know about given the videos that I've released, and this is what eventually led to him being blocked, because he decided to get not only insulting, but he also projected his own dishonesty onto myself, as he does with everyone he argues against. He banned me from his channel for homophobia, a charge which had absolutely no basis. At this point he had earned himself a permanent ban from my channel. If someone wishes to block me from their channel, they earn an automatic ban from mine. It's a silent policy and a non-negotiable one. Now the events that followed from this are familiar to my regulars, and the videos dealing with this charlatan are listed in the info bar for anyone who is interested in looking over the backstory. Back to the present. I responded to a lot of comments that Mr Killian made against Njanovic on his video, all of which consisted of the usual mix of accusations that Njanovic, as well as an Australian YouTube user by the name of Franks2732, being a liar, a moron, a cultist, a dogmatist, and so on and so forth. It's his go-to thing, and I pointed this out by means of ridicule. After all, when someone refuses to be rational, then this is all you're left with. Ironically, if Mr Killian chooses to make a video response to this video, I'm sure he'll accuse me of projecting, which would count as an instance of projection on his part again, given that this was all he has done, the evidence for which is in previous videos and in the comments section. But none of this changes the fact that he routinely makes these accusations against other people that do not follow his belief system of libertarianism. At the point I started laying down my comments, Mr Killian was blocked from Janovic's channel, and for good reason. Had he made the comments on my video that he had made on Janovic's video, he'd be blocked from commenting if he weren't already on a permanent ban on my channel. I mention this because some of his followers came along and drew attention to it as though I were being cowardly for doing so, for which I then went ahead and pointed out their hypocrisy in doing so themselves. After all, these same people had no problem whatsoever doing it when I was banned from Mr Killian's channel. Furthermore, Mr Killian likes to respond to people by demanding that they defend a point they never made about a subject they weren't even talking about, as you'll see shortly. He also likes to accuse people of being in one particular camp of political thought with no justification whatsoever. Look at these comments that came about in response to Bill Burns 2. Now just for kicks, there is one comment that demonstrates Mr Killian's lack of intellectual and moral integrity for what it is, and it's highlighted through a series of comments relayed back to me through one of his most devoted followers, VPSQBD. In it, he posted a comment that Mr Killian made on his own forum. I'm going to read that comment here. Cherry picking is lame, brah.
Australia ranks number 3. Its highest scores are business freedom 91.9%, labour freedom 90.6%, and property rights and financial freedom at 90%. Its lowest scores are fiscal freedom 63.4% and government spending 67.1%. So basically, he cherry picks two aspects they score low on and makes out like I'm being ridiculous when I'm the one who cited a metric that included all economic policies, and then he accused me of not doing basic research.
Shane. My accusation still stands. As I responded in the comment section itself, I shall so respond here. Indeed, cherry picking is. Perhaps you can let Mr Killian know that the next time he decides to launch another baseless attack against the NHS, since you've seen fit to link a comment he made on his own forums, that he has sole control over and therefore we would never get a fair hearing on, which is why I steer clear of them, can you please pass back the following statement? It is an instance of base hypocrisy to accuse someone of homophobia and subsequently block them for use of the phrase circle jerk while accusing two people of being butt buddies on another forum, especially given that circle jerk has a definition in the Urban Dictionary that does not have sexual orientation or sexual activity attached to it, whereas butt buddies can only be interpreted one way, and that's a childish insult that does not accurately reflect the position of the parties involved. Make sure you get that message to him, and be sure to get his response back here. If you're blocked, get your buddy Evensgrey to do it for you. I want to be sure that he has the bollocks to answer this base and fucking disgusting hypocrisy of his. So far I've heard nothing at all in response to this. I guess Mr Killian doesn't have the courage of his convictions to stand by this base hypocrisy of his. Now with respect to VPSQBD's copy-pasta statement from Killian's own blog, citing a bunch of figures as shown here doesn't change the fact that Australia still has social protections in place for its citizens that he, you and your cronies all frown upon. Now it surprises me in no way whatsoever that Mr Killian missed the point. It doesn't matter whether Australia ranks in terms of economic freedom if said ranking is present in spite of the existence of the very social protections that people like Mr Killian blame for the poor performance of countries like the United States and so on. Anytime the government proposes to give the citizens of the country the same level of protection, for instance the public option that Obama proposed, they cry wolf and scream at the top of their lungs how it will drive business away, increase unemployment, and so on. They did the same thing with minimum wage, and the evidence does not reflect their claims that minimum wage increases unemployment. It is not morally, ethically, or intellectually sound to expect a person sweeping floors in a factory to do so full-time, yet earn so little money that he has to borrow from other people or claim from a charity just to meet his basic needs. And no, just to answer another Killian accusation, I'm not talking about people who irresponsibly spend their money on blinged out cars or jewellery and then don't bother to pay their rent. I'm talking about people who do not earn enough money to pay for the basics, let alone anything else. So my point was that Australia has all of these protections in place and they're still doing well as an economic entity in the world. The world isn't falling around the people there. Now Franks would know better about this than I. He lives in Australia, so I'll let him expand on this if necessary. Lastly, concerning Australia, the figures were quoted from the Economic Freedom Index, which comes from the Heritage Foundation. Guess what the Heritage Foundation is? It's a conservative think tank, run by conservatives, set up by the Koch Foundation. What? The Koch Foundation? Oh, that's right, yes. The Koch Foundation is set up and run by the Libertarian Koch brothers. If this isn't an instance of foundational bias of the sort that we've come to expect from political extremists like Mr Killian, then I can't think of anything more obvious at this moment in time. As for his statements regarding hypocrisy and cowardice, which were echoes by his followers on Njanovic's channel, I have this to say. You guys exhibit hypocrisy in great abundance. Complaining about other people responding to comments after the original commenter is blocked while doing the exact same thing yourself is pure hypocrisy. Accusing me of lying about Thomas Jefferson when I never even mentioned his name nor any other president's name in the comment section is an epic failure to ascribe remarks where they lay. I know very little about Jefferson other than what I read in the public forum, and so I would not presume to speak for the guy. Unlike libertarians who have the audacity to speak for a guy who is long dead as if they personally knew him. Appealing to my sense of bravado, by the way, won't work. I couldn't care less if every single libertarian on the planet thought I was a coward. I'm not going to play their little word games anymore. It's especially pointless in light of the following claim from Mr Killian that we did, referring to the founding of the United States of America's government, allegedly a libertarian government at the time, and an allegation I'm not prepared to respond to as it does not pertain to this point. Mr Killian was in no way responsible for setting up the United States of America, so this we business is disingenuous at best. Mr Killian prefers instead to sit back in his comfortable office chair crowing on about how great and wonderful libertarianism is, while taking advantage of every single modern convenience, the statutes laid down by local, state and federal law to his own advantage, using the infrastructure and the currency, all while bad-mouthing the very thing that has kept him alive. That's the kind of parasitic bullshit that I have no tolerance for. It was the country's forefathers that set up the United States of America, not Mr Shane Killian, nor any of his buddies. And back to this nonsense about the video. Now you see, unlike Mr Killian, when I say I'm not going to respond to a video, I stick to it. He initially told me that he was not interested in responding to what is likely to be a bogus video, and then he goes and responds to it anyway. And as I've already illustrated in this video, he's fond of cherry-picking data and quotations to fit his arguments without having any real evidence to back up his dishonest claims. I said I wouldn't be responding to his video response to me, that you guys call pwnage, and, I mean, how pathetic is that? And I am standing by that course of action in the same way as I stand by my accusation that all of you are engaging in reciprocal act of congratulatory ego-boosting colloquially known as a circle jerk. I've no real need to respond to a video that is no better than the video I initially responded to, which is guilty of cherry-picking data, quote mining from a newspaper article, and deliberate distortions of fact. All of his followers have told me the same thing over and over and over again. That I'm too afraid to respond to his video, that I'm a coward, and that, quote, I can smell the ass-hurt and cowardice from here, end quote. It's not that I'm too afraid. It's that I really can't be asked to refute such wholesale bullshit. It's a complete and total waste of my time to go through yet another misinformation-riddled podcast. But if these boys and girls want to continue to assume that I'm too much of a coward, let them do so. Let them all think that I don't have the balls to deal with more Killian nonsense. Let everyone think that. In the meantime, I can concentrate on other projects that are far more deserving of my time. One last thing. None of you have any fucking business whatsoever comparing the lack of belief in the supernatural to your political extremism and your political ideology. And if you want a name for that, it's the fallacy of composition. Thank you for listening.